Aloha, everyone. Welcome to our Developing Your Theory of Change workshop. Thank you so much for understanding about last week's postponing of the workshop. Today, we are going to be looking at a theory of change and how to create it. To get us started today, we will just be reviewing really quick the schedule for the rest of the competition. So just a reminder that tomorrow, Wednesday, November 13th is the deadline to register your team. That will be at midnight. And then our next workshop will be November 20th at 7:30 p.m. and it will take place on Zoom. So that will be the last workshop of the competition before your submissions are due on December 2nd, and the winner will be announced on December 4th. A reminder with the registration, please scan this QR code and it needs to be completed by November 13th at 11:59 p.m. It's just a super simple form, but just some information that we need. So today with our workshop, we will be looking at a couple of different components of a theory of change. So first, we're going to look at what is a theory of change, just defining it. Then we're going to explore the components, and then we're going to work on creating a theory of change for our programs. What is a theory of change? So a definition of theory of change we're going to be using today says a theory of change explains why we think certain actions will produce the desired change in a given context. And the framework we will use to make it super simple is the if, then, because statement. So if we do X, then Y will happen because of Z. So this is the framework we're going to use. There are many different frameworks out there, but we'll use this one to make it more simple. Why is a theory of change important? Making a theory of change explicit allows us to reveal our assumptions about how change works and why the chosen programmatic priorities or project framework functions better than others. So your theory of change is essentially laying out why your program is going to work to meet a certain need or solve a certain conflict and base all of your assumptions on research and evidence. So like it says, it allows us to reveal our assumptions about how change works. And it's a really valuable exercise, especially as you're developing a program, to sit down and to look at the different components of your program and really try to articulate what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what research backs that up. So that's what we're going to kind of take you through today. This meme illustrates a little bit about why it's important. As you can see, we have a math equation, and you have the first part and the second part, and then in the middle it says then a miracle occurs. So if you don't have a theory of change, you're basically just saying, then this desired result is going to happen just because. But your theory of change is that middle step that really articulates and connects your action with the desired result with research, and it kind of connects them all together. So we're going to watch a video here that illustrates an example of not having a theory of change and what can happen. So it's kind of a funny video, a funny story, but just think about what would happen if they had have taken time to make a theory of change as we watch this video. So we're going to just get this started here.
My first book, Ripples from the Zambezi, was a project where we Italians decided to teach Zambian people how to grow food. So we arrived there with Italian seeds in southern Zambia, in this absolutely magnificent valley, going down to the Zambezi River, and we taught the local people how to grow Italian tomatoes and zucchini. And of course, the local people had absolutely no interest in doing that, so we paid them to come and work, and sometimes they would show up. And we were amazed that the local people in such fertile valley would not have any agriculture. But instead of asking them how come they were not growing anything, we simply said, thank God we're here. Just in the nick of time to save the Zambian people from starvation. And of course, everything in Africa grew beautifully, and we had these magnificent tomatoes. In Italy, a tomato would grow to this size, in Zambia, to this size. And we could not believe. And we were telling the Zambians, look how easy agriculture is. When the tomatoes were nice and ripe and red, overnight, some 200 hippos came out from the river and they ate everything. And we said to the Zambians, my God, the hippos. And the Zambia said, yes, that's why we have no agriculture here. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked.
All right, so this is an example of what happens when you don't take time to do a theory of change and to have the evidence to back up your approach to a specific conflict. So it was kind of a funny illustration. You know, they thought they were meeting a specific need, they thought they were helping the people, but really they were just feeding the hippos. But this was because they didn't take time to ask. And so this quote here from the United Nations Development Group really supports and illustrates what you need to do in a theory of change in order to make it successful and as a result to make your project and your approach successful. So it says, while developing the theory of change, it is necessary to validate the various steps against available evidence and the perspectives of other stakeholders to ensure that the analysis is sound and the key assumptions are plausible. So as we go through the different components of a theory of change, just keep in mind, you always need to validate your specific approach, your specific assumptions about how you're going to solve this conflict or need against available evidence and the other perspectives of other stakeholders. If in the previous video they had have taken time to talk to the stakeholders there in Zambia, then they would have been able to see that there's a reason there is no agriculture, but they didn't take that time. So this is super, super important to be able to take time to do proper analysis and to have evidence to support your theory of change and your approach to meeting a specific conflict or need. So now we're going to talk about the different components of a theory of change. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will be using the if, then, because statements to frame theories of change. There are many different approaches. This is just the one we're using to make it as simple as possible. So the components would look like this all together. If we do blank, then blank will happen because of blank, blank, blank reasons. So let's take this down one step at a time. First step, if we do blank. So this first step is going to be your action point. Define what is needed for the desired change to happen. This is where you're going to say, you know what, I am going to go and teach this specific workshop to this group of people. That is my action point, okay? What needs to happen for a desired change to happen? The second point, your then statement, this is where you define what change you want to happen based on the action you took in the first step. Okay, I'm teaching conflict transformation workshops to this group of people in order to enhance workplace unity. So that is your then statement. Then workplace unity will happen. So if we teach these workshops, then this will happen. That's your middle step. And then your last step is the most important in my opinion, is where you give the reasoning for why your action point is going to produce the desired results in step 2. This is where you share why the change happened in step 2 because of your actions in step 1. This should always be backed up by research, a needs analysis where applicable, and be measured along the way to ensure that it holds up, your assumptions hold up against what you're actually doing. So in the last video that we watched, the example, they didn't have a needs analysis and they didn't have research into the community as to why agriculture hadn't been done before, how it could work, what are the different pros and cons of it. But this is really, really important. This is where you're going to have evidence, research done, conversations with stakeholders to back up your assumptions about why a change is going to happen based on the action that you're doing. So this is super, super important. A personal example for me is a project I did where I taught conflict transformation skills to PCC's training and development team. So this is the action that we did in our step 1. Our step 2, the assumptions coming out of this was that the training and development team would be able to incorporate conflict transformation skills in their trainings, and then model effective conflict transformation techniques in interactions with other departments. So these were the outcomes that we wanted based on the action we were taking in step 1. Then we come to step 3, and this is where we back up the research. We have research to back up our approach and to kind of justify why we're doing it. We say, because teaching conflict transformation tools in the workplace has been shown to increase workplace performance, enhance workplace unity, and invite the same behavior from others. And then I have an Arbinger reference in there. You don't have to have a specific in-text citation in your theory of change, but this is just showing that the research that we took and the evidence we had to support our approach to meeting this need in the PCC training and development team was from Arbinger's Outward Mindset book. That's not an accurate citation, but just basically we would take concepts from the Outward Mindset where they've taught these tools in workplaces and seen unity come and seen how when you act a certain way, you invite behavior from others. So this is the evidence that is supporting our claim. So again, as you're creating your theory of change, you don't have to necessarily go into the specific community because it's not always accessible and do your own like firsthand research. But there is research out there. We want you to find relevant research of people who have done approaches similar to your own or things in the past or companies that are doing something similar right now and see what is supporting their approach to meeting a specific conflict or need. So now we're going to go on to creating your own theory of change. So I kind of like to start backwards when I'm creating my theory of change. Start with my because, then talk about my then, and then create the action plan based off that. So we're going to do that. Your because, I want you to just take a minute and to think, what is your because? Okay, what need or conflict are you addressing? And think about who else works in this space and how are you different? What research supports your approach? Is there a needs analysis you can review to get relevant support and evidence for your approach? Take a minute to pause the video and jot down some notes. Okay, welcome back. I hope you've taken some time to really think about this because this research and evidence will support everything else you do in your theory of change. Okay, so this next part is your then. What is the intended outcome of your program based on the research and evidence you found in your because? What change do you want to happen because of your program? Again, take a minute to pause the video, write down some notes about what your intended outcome is, what change you want to happen because of your program or approach to meeting a specific need or conflict in the Asia Pacific region. Okay, welcome back. I hope that was helpful. And then this last part here is your if, where sometimes we want to start with the action point, but I want you to first think about the evidence that you have, then the intended outcome, and now what is the best action that you can do? What's the best action for your program, your organization you're pitching for this competition to meet that specific need that is supported by evidence? So think, what is that action point? What are you doing in your project or program? And what actions are intended to create change? Again, take some time, pause this video, and think through these questions, write down some notes. Okay, welcome back. So just to review here, these are going to be the different components of your theory of change. If we do blank, then blank will happen because of blank, blank, blank reasons. You can have however many reasons you want in there. The first step is your action point. Then your second step is where you define what change you want to happen. And your third step is what change happened because of your actions in step one. Always back it up by research and needs analysis where applicable and measure it along the way to ensure that it holds up as you are implementing the program, it's actually delivering the change that you need. So this is a review of the theory of change. You don't have to use the if, then, because framework. This is just the simplest one for theory of change that we found to teach, but you don't have to necessarily use that in your presentation for the competition. Just a warning, when implementing your project, your theory of change will be tested. The assumptions you have made might not hold up against the outcomes of the program and project you're doing, and that's okay. You may need to adjust as you go on, and that's good. We want you to have an initial theory of change, and then to implement your program or your project or organization, and then to adjust and measure the effect along the way to become more effective. You know, you do your research at the beginning, and then you go out into the field and do it, and then you take some time to analyze it to ensure that you are using it, doing something in an effective way to meet this need. So for the submission requirement for a competition, we're going to have you do 250 words, at least 250 words. It can be more if you want. And just a detailed description of the theory of change. This can all be found at ponoponopeace.org/competition. But this will be the written submission portion, at least 250 words, and then you can implement that in your spoken presentation however you want. But just make sure that you address the action that you're taking, the outcome that you want, and the research or evidence to back up the approach that you're taking to meet a specific need. Okay, and a reminder about registration. Please register your team by November 13th at 11:59. Here's the QR code to scan. After this point, Wednesday, only those who have registered will be getting communications about further competition workshops and information. Thank you so much for coming. Here's our contact information, our website, our email, and follow us on Instagram for more recent updates. Thank you guys so much for coming. Here are our sources if you would like to check those out. Thank you.